Welcome to Fired Up. Be sure to hit the like button and then comment on the show. That helps us reach more viewers, if you would be so kind. Here I am again with another weekly episode of Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, and I'm broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, as well as the American Guns and Glory Network, YouTube, and numerous other media. If your local internet provider doesn't carry Fired Up, ask them to do that. We'll take care of it. A new show is posted every Thursday around 5 p.m. Pacific Time. The audio is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can check out KELY1230.com for the station in your part of Nevada. If you have questions or comments, send me an email to bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder. That's 702-257-1060. Again, that is 702-257-1060. If you would like to be contacted back, please leave your number or an email address. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms each week in the United States. I always select a few for our listeners' information. Most are good shooting, some not so good, but all are educational for those of you that keep a defensive firearm at home or carry one out in public. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. The advice given here may not apply in the area where you live. Advice from a local gun-knowledgeable defense attorney is always recommended. I paraphrase incidents for clarity by translation from police jargon, lawyer speak, and regional accents into standard American English. And incidents are as reported with the names of the participants deleted. The names of the cops, the lawyers, and the media are generally used. First up, another gun law update. As I'm sure enthusiasts know, President Joe Biden is on continuing his effort to eliminate civilian possession of firearms in America. Earlier today, President Biden announced a set of executive actions and legislative proposals on gun control, saying that gun violence is a public health crisis and the administration's actions do not contravene the Second Amendment. The administration aims to confront not just the gun crisis, but what is actually a public health crisis, Biden said in his remarks in the Rose Garden. He was joined by Vice President Harris. President Biden said, "Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. These are phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about." I have no idea what that means. Continuing, President Biden said, "But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. From the very beginning, you couldn't own any weapon you wanted to own. From the very beginning, the Second Amendment existed. Certain people weren't allowed to have weapons. So the idea is just bizarre to suggest that some of the things that we're recommending are contrary to the Constitution." Biden is also asking the Department of Justice to propose within 60 days a rule on braces used for handguns, which make them more accurate, to propose action on community violence intervention, to public suggestions for red flag legislation, and is asking his administration to issue a report on gun trafficking. Biden also formally announced David Chipman as the director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, the ATF. A senior administration official Wednesday said that Chapman will respect the Second Amendment while he enforces gun laws. The president also pushed for 2 gun control laws that would go even further than that. Biden said we should also ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines in this country. He said there's no reason for a person to need a weapon that can hold 100 rounds. we also should eliminate gun manufacturers from the immunity they receive from the Congress. That was referring to the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Firearms Act, a law that prevents gun makers from being sued for crimes committed with guns they sell legally. He said, "This is the only outfit that is exempt from being sued. If I get one thing on my list, give me that one." Comments: with all these attacks on firearms rights in the election in 2022 could well flip the House and Senate. Taking lawfully possessed guns away from Americans will cause increased crime as victims will not be able to defend themselves. More coroner's reports will be listing the manner of death as executive order. I saw my old friend Newt Gingrich commenting on media shows this morning that federal tax increases, inflation, that is, loss of value of the dollars you have, will destroy everybody's savings and tank the economy, which it certainly will. Look at the costs of food and so forth that are going up ridiculously now. And a separate word here after reading through all this stuff: if you have not figured it out, nice guy Uncle Joe, your fellow Democrats will use the 25th Amendment to make Kamala Harris president. Watch for it. Here it comes, Joe. Find my latest book, Self-Defense with Firearms, Use of Force in Nevada, on Amazon Kindle for only $4.95. The book is right here. We're going to run a little bit about it right now. My latest book, Self-Defense with Firearms, Use of Force in Nevada, is now available on Amazon Kindle for $4.95. You can download it now. It contains examples of dozens of shootings and pointing a firearm cases that I personally experienced in my 24 years in law enforcement, or where I testified in court or deposition as a firearm and use of force expert. The book is about the use of firearms in defense of yourself and others in my home state of Nevada. I have appeared as an expert witness in Nevada courts dozens of times, and that experience has shown me the necessity of putting pen to paper once again. Nevada state law as printed can be misleading to those of you who read it, as it is written in legal jargon, what I usually call lawyer speak. These statutes are also bent or even broken by the courts in their everyday decisions that we generally call case law. Those are rulings that say this or that statute does not apply in a particular incident and similar cases. That causes the law you are depending on when you make a decision to use your firearm only partially or not apply at all to your actions. Relevant Nevada statute numbers are included here and there, so readers may look up current wording on the Nevada State website. Teaching firearms in 28 law enforcement academies, including cadets from 26 different Nevada agencies, personally instructing over 30,000 concealed firearm permit students and 20,000 private security officers, I've discovered a lot of commonalities in deadly force incidents. Less than 100 pages, this book offers advice that can save lives and costs of expensive defense lawyers to reduce your losses in the inevitable civil lawsuits that follow these incidents. Get a copy, learn how to avoid, prepare for, and react to life-threatening situations. Our first actual regular story this week comes from the San Diego Union Tribune and KGTV. Several journalists, Michelle Ewing, Alex Riggins, and David Hernandez, worked on this. On April 1, 2021, in San Diego, California, An incident unfolded just after 9 in the evening at a house on 43rd Street between J and K Street. That's just north of the Greenwood Memorial Park and Mortuary, where a 60-year-old resident came home to find two men waiting for him outside in the Mount Hope. This is the Mount Hope neighborhood of San Diego. He came home, there's two guys waiting for him outside. Police Lieutenant Matt Dobbs said one of the two men, a 39-year-old male, pointed a gun at the resident and demanded property. The resident was then led into the home where the men began rummaging for valuables. Lieutenant Dobbs said the resident was able to disarm the armed intruder and then pointed the gun back at him. The intruder reportedly charged the resident who fired the gun several times. The other intruder, believed to be in his mid-30s, fled the area and the resident called 911. Responding officers found the 39-year-old who was shot inside the home. Officers started CPR on him before paramedics arrived and transported the wounded suspect to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. His name was not released. Lieutenant Dobbs said the investigators do not believe the resident and the intruders knew each other. He said the resident was cooperating with the investigators and was not considered a suspect in a crime. He added that the case is being investigated as a home invasion robbery that resulted in a fatal shooting. Asked if investigators believe the resident acted in self-defense, the lieutenant said the district attorney's office will evaluate the situation. We do the investigation and present the facts to the DA, who will opine on whether a valid self-defense claim exists. Comments here. From the narrative, it appears only the 39-year-old invader was armed. It certainly appears to be a valid self-defense shooting in most jurisdictions. The distance between the perp and the resident when the shots were fired certainly matters. Additional considerations will be their physical sizes and agility. The lawsuit lawyers will be salivating over these details. The problem in this incident could be that the resident shot an unarmed perp. He took the perp's gun away. If the shots were part of an in-contact physical struggle, this will be a clean shooting in self-defense. If the shots were at some distance, perhaps not such a clean shooting. As usual, the devil is in the minutiae of the details that are not known at the time. Hopefully, the shooter has already contacted a criminal defense attorney. This could be really problematic for the guy if you're involved in a shooting, particularly where somebody died. He shot him with the bad guy's gun, meaning the guy he shot was unarmed at the moment. Here we go. Story number 3. This one is from One American News Network. A journalist named Pooja Salvi reports April 2nd in Fairbanks, Alaska, a local resident stopped an attempted robbery at a gas station by pointing his gun at the suspect and holding him at gunpoint until law enforcement arrived. It was supposed to be just another Friday for the resident who was standing in line at a Holiday gas station. Not a Holiday, the name of the company is Holiday gas station, for his breakfast and energy drink when he saw a teenager walking in with a knife in his hand. The local resident became a hero as the 17-year-old allegedly walked into the store with a knife and told employees he was robbing the store. The resident stated, "I kind of backed up a little bit to see what he was going to do, but I already kind of had an inkling in my head of what was going to happen and what he was going to do." The resident told media, "I put my stuff on the counter, snuck out the door, ran out to my car, grabbed my pistol, and came back up to the door. As I came up to the door, the teenager just turned to look at me. I racked the slide of my pistol and pointed it at him, and he put his hands up. The resident told the 17-year-old to put down his knife and lay face down on the floor while they waited for the cops. Arriving officers placed the 17-year-old would-be robber under arrest and charged him with attempted robbery in the first degree and third degree assault. So the resident drew his gun in order to prevent a robbery from happening and possibly to avoid things from escalating. The question here is, what would the resident have actually used the gun? He told police no. The resident said, while he wasn't planning on using his gun, he's sure glad that he had it on for such a situation. He admits that he feels having a gun deters crime. They're a shield against thieves, a deterrent against most crimes if people know that your establishment or people in that establishment could be armed. At the same time, Alaska state troopers advised people not to get involved in such incidents and to phone 911 if possible. After the arrest, the employee brought the resident after his arrest, the employees bought the resident his breakfast. The resident added that he hopes the 17-year-old gets his life turned around, and this was a wake-up call for him. Comment here is, naturally, the Alaska State Troopers advise citizens to call 911 and wait for the professionals to arrive. Regular viewers know that I agree with that. The list of things that could have gone wrong would fill 2 or 3 fired-up episodes. In this incident, it worked out safely for everybody. The frustration Americans are feeling with the huge increase in violent crime causes frustration for citizens who want to do something. One America News Network, also known as One America News, is a far-right pro-Donald Trump cable channel founded by Robert Herring Sr. and owned by Herring Networks Incorporated. They launched in July 4, 2023. The network is headquartered in San Diego, California, and the channel is available on Newsmax. If you don't get that channel, check it out. One America News. Great information. We're going to break here for a short response from some of our friends and associates. I will be back in just a moment. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies-only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. A quick correction on the last segment. At the end of it, I said One America News Network was founded in 2023, which hasn't happened yet. It was founded in 2013. Anyway, great place. Check out their stuff. Don't want you to think they hadn't happened yet. They're there. Story number 4, KWTW News 9 Now, CBS, a journalist named Clayton Cummins reports April 1st, 2021 in Lookeba, Lookeba, Oklahoma. It's a town in Oklahoma, Lookeba. The Caddo County deputies were called to a home on Country Road 1140 on March 22nd after the homeowner noticed two suspicious men circling his home. The Caddo County Sheriff, Spencer Davis, said the homeowner called his brother-in-law, who lives down the road from him, and told him he might want to come down because he's fixing to get burglarized. The two males, aged 22 and 30, began kicking in the homeowner's back door. Sheriff Davis said that when the suspects entered the house, the homeowner fired a shot in their direction. That shot apparently failed to hit anyone. Then one of the suspects, it's unclear which one, fired a shot back at the homeowner. At that point, both suspects fled the house, got into a vehicle, and drove away. The homeowner's family member, the guy coming from the next door or whatever, began chasing them as they drove away. The suspects then began firing shots from their vehicle's sunroof as they fled. The suspects eventually crashed into a tree and ran away on foot. Numerous calls were made to 911 as citizens spotted the two suspects in a field. The 30-year-old perp gave himself up to law enforcement shortly after the crash, while the 22-year-old caused an hours-long manhunt. He eventually surrendered to police in a nearby field. Sheriff Davis hopes the suspect learned a valuable lesson. I would not advise breaking into anything in rural Oklahoma because they don't mess around. Somebody might end up getting hurt. Both suspects were found with methamphetamine on them and are also convicted felons. They were booked on the complaint of possession of a controlled substance, first-degree burglary, and shooting with intent to kill. If you look this story up, it's rather difficult to follow because the reports are a bit fragmented. These two are clearly not criminal masterminds. Two felons bring their methamphetamine and illegally possess guns to a burglary that turns out to be a home invasion because the targeted home was occupied. Perhaps I'm giving them too much credit for planning. More likely they just picked the target for no reason at all. I don't think my usual advice about security cameras, serious door locks, and dogs would have affected their decision-making ability. Sometimes trouble just finds you. Stay armed and be alert to what's going on in your front yard. Story number 5. WPLG Local10.com reports April 5, 2021 in Miami Beach, Florida. Police responded to a Miami Beach mansion after a possible home invasion. According to the officers, it all started around 10:30 Saturday evening when 4 men got into a private driveway of a gated community on Pine Tree Drive near 44th Street. Once on the other side of the gate, each of the men got into a car belonging to the resident. The high-end cars included a Range Rover, a Rolls-Royce, a Porsche, and a Lamborghini. A security guard that has worked for the resident noticed what was happening and opened fire, striking a subject who was inside the Range Rover. A second subject got out of the parked Rolls-Royce and fled with the other subjects in a white Porsche 911 and a green Lamborghini Urus. That's apparently a rare Lamborghini. I thought they were all rare. Anyway, the injured subject inside the car refused to cooperate with officers and barricaded himself in the vehicle for several hours, which called for a hostage negotiation team to respond to the scene. You're in a car in a gated community and you refuse to come out of the car. Where do you think you're going? Anyway, eventually the suspect surrendered and he was taken to Jackson Memorial Hospital, where he is listed in critical but stable condition. He has yet to be formally charged. Throughout Sunday mornings, deputies combed the property for clues. At one point, they appeared to dust the Rolls-Royce for fingerprints. The Range Rover was later taken away in a tow truck. The 2 other cars and the men who took them have not been located. Anyone with information is asked to call Miami Beach Police or Miami-Dade Crime Stoppers at area code 305-471-8477. Area code 305-471-8477. Comments here, this appears to be a clear property crime. Extremely valuable property, but still a property crime. When applying deadly force, there needs to be a danger of death or serious bodily injury to a human. Perhaps I am missing some nuance in Florida law. The section I found in about 30 seconds is Florida Statute Section 776.012, Section 2. Justifiable use of deadly force is defined. A person is justified in using or threatening use of deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening the use of such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another, or to prevent an imminent commission of a forcible felony. That's pretty clear. I'm not a lawyer, but I've read a lot of case law. The lawsuit lawyers will be salivating over this one, as the owner of the property, being a person or a corporation, certainly appears to have some serious assets available. The security guard, acting as an agent for the property owner, is in for a few years of life-changing experiences. This is virtually always the result of incidents where shots are fired. This guy is going to take the brunt. I'm not familiar with the nuances of security officer law in Florida, and I understand they're probably pretty liberal about when you're allowed to shoot. But when you've got a pure property crime, look out. Here it comes. We're going to break one more time for another batch of few commercials from some of our friends and associates. I'll be right back with some comments on politics in Nevada. Don't go away. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man, Don Green, 702-409-8239. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. Story number 6, a little bit about firearm politics in Nevada. I just watched an interview with Newt Gingrich where he stated his belief that both the Senate and the House of Representatives will flip to Republican in 2022. His reasoning is the Biden, Harris, Schumer tax rates will destroy the value of the U.S. dollar. Although 2020 election is just 5 months in the rearview mirror, the state's political machines have already churned back into motion as potential candidates make early decisions about the state's most consequential races. Congressman Mark Amodei, former Lieutenant Governor Mark Hutchinson, and Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo are each taking a serious look at entering the Republican primary field for governor. All three are believers in the right to keep and bear arms. The Review Journal speculates that the three potential candidates will come to an agreement in the next month and not compete against one another in a primary. In another surprise move, North Las Vegas Mayor John Lee said he is switching parties to become a Republican. Although Mayor Lee and I have crossed swords over his odd views on penalizing parents for inadequate gun storage shootings, where a child got a hold of a gun, a couple of cases. I had them on my show, and we were talking about this. And he said if a child got a hold of a gun, the storage was inadequate, period. If the child got it, the storage was a failure. And he then would want to take punitive action against the parents by seizing their gun or charging them with some misdemeanor violent act or something. Anyway, that being said, Mayor John Lee is certainly more pro-gun than any of the possible Democratic candidates. All this bodes well for firearms rights in Nevada. Most of this information, by the way, comes from the Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter named Rory Appleton. This is a long thing he wrote about the politics coming up in Nevada. His entire well-researched article is available at lvrj.com. Just go to lvrj.com and search Roy Appleton, and you will find it. It's well worth the read. Story number 7. KATU News 2, ABC, a journalist named Allison Mechanic, reports April 5th, 2021 in Portland, Oregon. The sheriff's office says a neighbor in the Maywood Park area saw a suspicious man with a gun. Turns out that man was a homeowner who accidentally stumbled upon 3 people suspected of stealing a catalytic converter off his car, which was parked in front of his home on Northwest Skidmore Street. The homeowner, who asked not to be identified, said, "I've been having some problems with raccoons, so I thought it was raccoons. I grabbed my .22 and went out to see what the noise was, and then I caught 3 people in the act of stealing my catalytic converter. One of them was under the car, one was the lookout or something, and then there was a woman who was driving. Police and deputies arrived. The homeowner was detained and then eventually allowed to go back into his home. His firearm was also returned to him later on. The other 3 people were booked into the detention center. The sheriff's office has identified them and their charges as follows: a 30-year-old female attempted theft, possession of heroin, possession of methamphetamine, possession of oxycodone, a 30-year-old male attempted theft, a 35-year-old male attempted theft, and several traffic warrants. The homeowner said, "I never pointed a gun at any person before. That was the first time I've ever had to do that, and I hope the last." The homeowner hopes this arrest will help prevent more crimes like this from happening in his neighborhood. He added, "I'm glad that I was able to stop it from happening and hope that prevents other episodes with other people. They were going to hit someone else right after they hit me, I'm sure." The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office was not able to say how many reports of stolen catalytic converters they have taken so far this year. The Portland Police says as of March 11, it took 94 reports. As of March, the Washington County Sheriff's Office took 37 reports in the last 6 months. The County District Attorney, Mike Schmidt, was not available to speak on camera Monday, but he released his previous statements about the rise in catalytic converter thefts. Comments here: this is a perfect no shots fired scenario. An armed household member is able to detain the would-be thieves and keep his property. That being said, pointing a firearm can be a crime if it is not related to a threat to a human. Hopefully, the Portland, Oregon authorities will not charge this resident. Again, having a criminal defense attorney involved would be a smart thing for this homeowner to do. Minor crimes like this cost millions of dollars in insurance expenses and court litigation every year across America. Portland is not known to be real friendly for armed citizens. It might be a really bright idea to have a defense attorney working on this. that does it for now. I'll be back next Thursday on my website, firedupwithboberwin.com, the American Guns and Glory Network, and numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. When watching any media, please click on subscribe so new shows can be sent to your phone or computer automatically each week. You can check out my recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen episodes. My logo merchandise, hats, shirts, and books are available at Battlefield Vegas, just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. Please remember when you get to this show, to friend us and comment. My waiver, which explains a lot more, will come up right as I'm ending this show. So you all have a great week, and I'll see you next week with very likely more interesting stuff on where we're going with President Biden or possibly President Harris. Have a good week.